All right, everybody, let's get to it and pull that tarp. We've got 2 guests today, a very special edition of Everybody Pulls the Tarp. Jessie and Bryan McFarland, the founders of 3x5 Life, a product that I'm a huge fan of. Let me flash one of my own 3x5 Life cards right up here. We're going to get into it all. Jessie, an adjunct professor, certified integrative nutritional health coach, yoga instructor, mindfulness educator. Bryan works with leaders in the manufacturing industry and just finished an ultra marathon in the Colorado Rockies. There's going to be so much for us to talk about. Where I want to start, Jessie and Bryan, is with 3x5 Life. So I'm a huge fan of the 3x5 Life products. I discovered the products probably 6, 7, 8 months ago. And I think what drew me initially to 3x5 Life was in a world where I was constantly trying to figure out the best way to automate things, the best app to do this, when I was overwhelmed with 57 different apps that I had downloaded but wasn't using to get myself more organized and enable me to pull more tarp and add more productivity to my life and be a better husband, father, employee, podcast host. You guys were creating something simple and analog and paper-based. And that's where I want to start. So why don't you share with the listeners and viewers what 3x5 Life is and some of the featured products? Let's start there.
Well, I mean, a quick background to play on what you were saying there, Andrew, is so this is truly a product of COVID. So when, the world flipped everybody's life upside down, I really started doubling down on my personal care, personal habits, my morning routines, evening routines, my diet, just making sure that I try to keep things steady and being really mindful so that I didn't get swept up in this uncertainty. So when I was looking around and I was seeing people, struggling around us, I was like, what can I do? What could I help? What could I put out there that might make an impact? And that's where, literally making pancakes for my kids, the idea hit me mid-flip and it went from inception, just the idea hit me, to full-blown product launch in 7, 8 weeks. So it was fast.
So I remember you explained to me the story, how fast it was. So let's explain to folks though these cards and how they work. So I'm holding one up here in my hands, yep. and I use these every day. It's one of my kind of favorite habits and routines that I've set. But from your mouth to the listeners' ears, explain the 3x5 Life cards.
So on one side of the card is AM gratitude and PM routines. So the idea is to prompt you to and at first thing in the morning to write something you're grateful for, write 3 things you're grateful for, draw something that inspires you, something that just brings gratitude to your life. Mm-hmm. And then in the evenings, on the other side of the card is PM wins. So BJ Fogg, in his famous book, Tiny Habits, he said, gratitude's in vogue right now, but eventually celebration is going to rank right up there with gratitude. So we need to start celebrating daily wins, celebrating the little and big wins of every single day. So that really hit home when I read that. So that's why I have on the other side of the card, PM wins. What are 3 great things that happened today? And there's science that goes along with that before you go to bed, if you're putting those positive things in your mind, you're going to sleep better. You're going to have better dreams at night. It's just going to kind of just uplift you right before bed. And then on the back end of the card is your typical, task list and day calendar, or we have a note version to just really try to get you organized, to focus on the top 10 things you need to accomplish today, not the 20 or 100 things. So that's kind of a quick breakdown of the card.
And that was super intentional. You brought up the simplicity of the product. I think, I'm a habit of putting a to-do list together that has 50 things on it. And I feel like I never accomplished everything that I want to. And we were looking for that prioritization process of, okay, what's the most important things that we need to do today? And so it took that big to-do list and kind of made it a little bit more bite-sized. And I found that I was able to achieve more, which gave me that sense of accomplishment. And then, transferring that right to my wins made me feel like the system was actually working a little bit easier for us.
And Jessie, that kind of just keeps this, once you get that cycle of positivity and accomplishment and gratitude and celebration going, it's easier to keep spinning.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because people use these cards in all different ways, and it's been so interesting to hear how people utilize it. And a lot of people were getting stuck with the word gratitude in the mornings. They were like, I was writing down very, things like the same things every day, right? We say like, we're grateful for my family. I'm grateful for food. I'm grateful for my house. And so people even flipping the language of the card to like, I get to, right? So like, I get to do this today, 1, 2, 3. And it could be something like go to work, right? I get to go to work. I was an educator for 13 years, a teacher for 13 years. And there were days where that's a celebration. I got to see my students, and just flipping that script first thing in the morning can change the trajectory of your day and how you're kind of entering it. And then going to bed, like you said, with that win in the PM and celebrating what went well instead of what didn't go well, gives you that like just like extra boost of, okay, like I'm going to do this again tomorrow and it's going to feel really good.
I absolutely love the get to, and and I always talk about the get to versus the have to, right? If you take the things that you have to do and you talk about them in the context of things that you get to do, it's a subtle, simple mindset shift that can have a really, really big impact, right? Like I talk about it, in terms of, instead of, I have to park so far from the store, I get to go to the store and I get to buy things and I get to get a little exercise when I walk to the store. I get to do this, I get to do that. It creates this sense of gratitude for sure. One of the things for me that's helped me be more productive using the 3x5 Life product system and cards is the ability. I still use my Microsoft Outlook and Google Calendar. Mm-hmm. But what I do is I sit down with my card in the morning and I actually try and synthesize and simplify what's on my calendar on the card. So I kind of take the digital to the analog, I guess, if you will. And what it enables me to do is a couple things. One, it forces me to kind of clean up some of the extraneous stuff. So some of the things on the calendar that maybe aren't as high of a priority today as maybe I thought when I put them on the calendar. Mm-hmm. But what it also helps me to do is start to get my brain thinking about some of those meetings and some of those conversations and things that I have to do throughout the day. And I find that it enables me to be more creative. I'm sharper when I walk into meetings. I have a better idea of what I want to do because the 3x5 Life card has forced me to kind of go digital to analog, I guess is the way you can you kind of put it. And then it also, so often through the day, things are happening so fast and you just get an alert. And I find that, before the 3x5 Life cards, I was driven by alerts. I would get an alert. Okay, I got to go do this. I get another alert. I got to go do this. This, by being able to think through the calendar, map out the times, it kind of commits my brain in a new way to where things are throughout the day. The other thing that I do, and Brian, I've shared this with you, and I don't know how many of your other customers and fans do this, but I actually, at the end of the day, I put it in like a shoebox, and then I'll periodically go back to it to see how I'm spending my time. And that's always an interesting exercise for sure. So you talked about this pancake aha moment where it hit you, and you talked about how kind of fast it came together. For those listening out there who, have ideas and want to start businesses, or haven't quite figured out that big aha moment yet, what's your advice to folks? Where do you find ideas, and how do you bring ideas to life?
I think everybody has ideas.
Yes.
We all have ideas. It's executing on ideas. When I was in my early 20s, I had a buddy that always had ideas, and we were going to make a T-shirt with all his ideas that he didn't execute on it as a joke. So I think ideas is just what inspires you, what brings you life. But then executing on them, I think it really starts with getting consistent with doing difficult things in life and doing uncomfortable things in life. I've spoken about this before. Like, neuroscientists have discovered that when you start a task and you finish it, the wires in your brain actually connect. So the more tasks you finish, the bigger tasks, the bigger goals, the bigger wires, that cross your brain. So it's almost like I kind of visualize the bigger trains you can cross those. So with me, like, as you mentioned earlier, like, I got into ultra running. I got into doing very difficult things, 50K races up to 100-mile ultra marathons. And as I accomplished more and more of those things, my internal belief system got stronger. My self-talk got better. So when the idea of 3x5 Life hit me, I was able to jump on that because I've done the work, I've done difficult things. So I had the internal belief that I could make this happen. So I think it starts with putting yourself in consistent, uncomfortable situations. So then when that opportunity does arrive, you have that internal dialogue to really execute on it.
And also the ability to take risk, right? Like, Bry's superpower is that he sees things through. Like, if he sets a goal or does something, like, he executes it too. Like, unlike anybody I've ever met. I'm a dreamer. I'm like big picture. I have ideas every day of my life, and I have a really hard time following through to get it to the point where it executes. So I'm so appreciative because it's not a superpower that I have, but we'll have this conversation and he's like, okay, like I'm going to do it. And like he said, 7 weeks. I mean, we had a film crew in our house. I had to be the actor in the product video because it was COVID and we couldn't have anybody else. So literally he's like, Tuesday, there's going to be a film crew here. They all wore masks and they took it very seriously, but you're going to be doing this with my brother-in-law. And I'm like, okay. And I'm very much like, I'm here for it. Let's do it. Like, let's just figure it out and go. And if we fall and we fail, then at least we know that we tried something. And that's kind of been our mentality forever.
It seems like you guys have these complementary strengths, which is a sign of any great team, let alone a husband and wife team.
Without a doubt. And we were talking about that before we jumped on here, Andrew, is, Jessie is an amazing facilitator. She's an amazing, she does keynote speeches for 300-500 people. And her way to articulate thoughts and really bring a group together is amazing. And then I kind of have the business side of it and can dream big and then execute. Mm-hmm. So it is a good pair.
How do you know, is there a point when you said yourself, I'm dreaming too big? Like Jessie, you said you're the dreamer. Bryan is kind of the executor. He's always going to see something through. Is there a point when you kind of reconcile those two and you say, okay, we're not going to see this through because we got to pivot to another dream? How do you deal with that?
We're dealing with that right now, Andrew.
Yes. So, every day.
That is a very present conversation because Jessie dreams big with me, mm-hmm. but I kind of push the dream envelope sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily. Just you do. He gets something in his head, and when I say it is a bulldoze straight through, it's sometimes exhausting. I mean, I laugh at it because I think it's actually entertaining a little because I can see where he's going. But there are some days where I'm like, can we just pump the brakes? Pump it for a minute. Let's zoom out a little bit and do a bigger analysis because you are very much you're very driven to completion.
Where you get in trouble, you have young kids, we have young kids, mm-hmm. It turns into distraction, and you have to have healthy distractions, but you can't have too many distractions. And I tend to just keep piling on where my growth trajectory is high. But my mindset needs to catch up to believe I can accomplish all of this. And sometimes it can be too much. Mm-hmm. And you have to be really mindful for that because what's it all for? You can pile on too much and be I'm achieving all these amazing things, but something has to give, something has to sacrifice along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it, Jessie.
I was going to say, we try to balance it out. It's interesting because we're unpacking this in real time, I feel so thank you for this question because we've never really dialogued about this. But when I say, I talk a lot about Ayurveda on the podcast, which is the sister science to yoga. And my dosha is Vata, which is very airy and dreamy. And I'm always out here and, I'm very positive and I'm very bubbly. And Bryan's always been the one to help me get my feet back on the ground to be okay, well, we're back here. So let's come back and talk about this logically. And I feel recently we've had a flip where there's multiple times where I've been hello, come back. I need you here. Cause, we were looking at sprinter vans last week because I said randomly, I want to, because I'm homeschooling our kids this year. And I'm I want to take them on the road and just do this right and travel with them. So what did he do? We went to a dealership and looked at sprinter vans.
But as a business to rent it out through Outdoorsy. So
right.
But then you have to learn the whole Outdoorsy platform and, so there's stuff involved there.
Yeah. So we digress, but we kind of balance that pulling each other back down to the ground to really kind of unpack if this is the right move for us or not.
Right.
But
it's very interesting. On this show every week I talk to Olympic athletes, elite coaches, professional athletes, CEOs, entrepreneurs, best-selling authors. And one of the things that I consistently hear from coaches in particular is, and in particular college coaches, right? So coaches that have to go out there and recruit players every single year, they say, Andrew, we're not always looking for, 10 or 15 of the best players. We're looking for 10 or 15 we're looking for players that are going to work well together, complement each other, because you can't, you can't have all of one thing. That doesn't work in any enterprise or any organization. So as I watch you guys kind of dialogue this out and think through, how, what you guys are each bringing to this company, to your family, to your marriage, it's very interesting to think about that in the context of what these coaches say, right? They're recruiting players that are complementary, and you guys clearly are. I want to go back, Bryan, to the distractions. You talked about how there are points when distractions can just become, there's good distractions and there's bad distractions. How do you kind of decipher between the two? When is it too much? When are you completely distracted?
So I try to put everything, like I'm very big on, I used to think core values were complete malarkey. But then, I got more serious about it. And my 3 core values in order are health, family, and freedom. And that's the filter system I use when I really try to make a decision of, my number 1 is health, because if I don't have my health, then, I can't be there for my family. And then, so if a new business opportunity comes up, or a real estate opportunity, it's just like, how is this going to impact our time with my health and my family? And then also, my 3rd is my freedom. And so how is my freedom going to be impacted? So when you keep piling on those distractions and everything start to fray. So I've started to go down that path where I was putting my core values aside, because I knew some decisions I was about to make was going to impact my family and was going to impact my freedom. And I had to take a step back, and I was forced kind of to take a step back to say, hey, let's keep this in check, because you're going to become so distracted that then, your core values are going to be out the window.
And what about you, Jessie? How do you look at kind of when something becomes too distracting, or how do you balance too much versus not enough?
I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about my core values are similar, but we've had conversations about what are my core values. And that's tricky when you're in a partnership and you're raising kids together and your core values, they do align. Like family is definitely my first core value. So I think a lot of times that my filter is so strong in that I help him with his filter of family to be kind of like to ground back. But I mean, lately I am definitely a yes person. And, we've had conversations about that. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no, has been kind of something that we've talked about a lot over COVID, because we've had time to kind of assess our calendar and how many things we're saying yes to. And
also your career move here.
Career move.
Yes. So, I mean, just to interject here, hats off to Jessie. Like we're homeschooling the kids this year, and she's taking that on because her core value is family, that she had an amazing career opportunity this year. That she put to the side because she knew it was going to be such a distraction to what she wanted to focus on, which was the kids, at least this calendar year.
And that was just our choice. I mean, there's no right choice in all of this, but that choice to homeschool, I homeschooled last year, and the thought was that we were going to go back to kind of the role of things. But yeah, that was something, again, through my core value filter for sure. But that hell yes, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no, has been really helpful for me too.
That's interesting. I want to like double click into this hell yes. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no, because I think that's something that a lot of the listeners can benefit from, because there are constantly demands requested. There's requests of our time. There's demands of our time. There's ambitious people and high performers are always looking for the next opportunity, and opportunities present themselves to high performers. And to take the listeners through that hell yes or no kind of mindset. How do you if your gut kind of initial visceral reaction is not hell yes, then it's a no? Is that how you guys go about doing that?
For me, yeah, I found myself in multiple situations where I've said yes to start like a business with somebody, like a friend, or I love like doing creative things that aren't necessarily in my wheelhouse, because I feel like they always teach me a lesson. But what I find is when I'm doing something that's outside of my comfort zone for too long, or outside of, I guess, my passions and purpose, then I feel out of alignment and off kilter, and it becomes something that's more of a burden, right? So when something presents itself, my gut reaction is like, absolutely, I'll do it. But I have to like hit the pause button for now and like take a step back and usually think about it in terms of, is this in alignment to where I'm going, where I want to be, my North Star, that thing that fills me up. And usually, my buckets are family, contribution, and well-being. And so even with like presenting, I'm offered all types of topics to present on. And lately, if it's something that's not like, I do a lot of wellness and self-care and stress management and well-being and staff support and social emotional learning, if it's not in those those buckets that I love so much, it's a no now. So it's difficult. It's not like it comes like intrinsically for me. It's work. Like I have to be like, okay, not a yes, then that's a no kind of thing.
And also, Andrew, something could be a hell yes 5 years ago that's a no now. And recognizing that, like, you decide to be on some board or some community center position, that now you're stuck in this every Thursday I have to go to this meeting, that's not filling you up anymore, when you could be allocating that time towards your passion, towards your side hustle, towards your kids, and really being like, you know what, I'm past that chapter in my life. It's time to step away.
And I think that's important. What both of you are saying there, right, about this is you've got to look through I say this all the time. It's very easy oftentimes in the moment to get excited about something. But then I challenge myself to say, okay, I might be excited about this now, but maybe today was a slower day than my typical day when somebody requested this of my time, or had this, or this idea came to me. When the going is good and things are quote unquote easy, maybe this sounds like a brilliant idea, but am I going to be willing to push through this with the 125% energy that I give everything I'm committed to when the going isn't easy and my schedule is packed, right? Like I'll find a lot of times, when I have kind of open space in my calendar, which is rare, but when I have some open space to kind of think, I get all these great ideas. And on that day, at that time, it sounds like a great idea. But then when you actually break it down, you don't have time to deal with all these things, to give it all the passion. So I try and think about it through that I'm going to use this hell yes or it's a no mindset that you guys are using, but I try and think about it through the prism of 60 days from now, 90 days from now, 3 years from now. If I'm not as excited about this as I am today, how am I going to will myself through the challenges and keep going? Much the way you go, Brian, where it's, come hell or high water, you're going to get this done and keep going to the end. The other thing is, I've been involved in a lot of different things throughout my life and my career, and I have struggled with that. I have struggled with the fact that, hey, this might not be as exciting to me right now, or I might not be as passionate about this issue or this cause or this committee or whatever it is that I'm involved in at the moment. And I've always struggled with the fact that, well, does that mean that it's never been that I wasn't passionate about this, or does it make me a bad person? And the reality is no. There was a period in your life when there was great alignment and commitment and passion, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you misalign with that cause if your alignment, if your passion wanes at a period of time. Talk about that a little bit more.
I can talk.
Yeah, go for it.
So passion and purpose is something that I teach a lot in my graduate courses. We talk about it a lot, and I feel like people sometimes get fatigued. Like I call it passion fatigue, because they think that there has to be this one thing that guides, like that sets their soul on fire and guides their life for the rest of their life. And once they find it, they're going to have the world figured out. And when they don't find it, I feel like it makes people feel really restless and uneasy. And so what I call myself a passion butterfly, which Brian thinks is ridiculous, but I think about how butterflies like move from one nectar to the other and different wildflowers at different times. And, that's me. Like I literally will be, I wanted to play the ukulele. And so I started teaching myself how to play the ukulele, like random. Like I pick something and I'm like, I'm really into this right now. And I love this right now. And that's okay too. And I think as you grow in different seasons of your life, and as, when you're in a partnership or when you have children, like you're going to find that your passions change. I think the biggest thing to think about with passion and purpose is just finding self-actualization, what makes you feel the happiest and most fulfilled. And then once you do that, then you're able to turn outward and help other people do the same. So it's like that self-actualization to contribution, right? Like that's the goal. And it could be, something this month, and then next month it could be something else that you want to learn and grow and thrive in and then be able to share. So that's my thought about passion.
So this show is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and I've talked about this philosophy with you guys, and this is all based around a mindset that great teams, great organizations are powered by individuals who do things far outside the boundaries of what's expected of them. They clean up after themselves even if they didn't make the mess. They do the little things that essentially nobody was expecting them to do. This everybody pulls the tarp mindset. It's all about little simple things that make a big difference on your success. So other than the 3x5 life cards and some of the things that we've already talked about, what are some of the little things that you guys are doing as a family, as a couple, as a company with 3x5 Life to maximize your productivity? What are some of the little things that you guys are doing to maximize success?
So when I was thinking about this question really quickly about the pull the tarp, and you actually just said cleaning up after yourself, which actually sparked something in my brain. I know this isn't really about me, but it reminds me of this mindset that was ingrained in me when I was little. My dad was a high school administrator for most of his career. And I remember him leaving our house like at like 5 a.m. every day to go. And he would go to school early and he would be the first person to arrive. And he would walk around all of the hallways in the high school and pick up any type of trash or anything that was in the hallway, so that by the time the teachers and students came, the hallways were immaculate. And I ended up teaching in the same district. I wasn't at the same school that he was an administrator in. And I remember teachers saying to me, your dad is always picking up trash. He just walks around the cafeteria and the building and picks up trash. And what my dad was trying to do was to model that, like, this is our space and we take care of it. And so he said at first kids would walk in and just walk over the trash and like walk right by him as he was picking it up. But he never said anything. And the more he did this, kids would stop and pick up the trash, right? So it was that. And then now my brother's actually an administrator and he does the same exact thing. So, and it was something that just was ingrained. And, you know, thinking about that idea of modeling is the most important form of teaching. And as a teacher, I never asked my kids to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. I was a middle school educator, 13-year-old kiddos. And if I asked them to do some type of crazy team building activity that put them out of their comfort zone or like game, you better believe that I was like right there with them. And I think that that was something that was such a huge piece of my childhood, like seeing that modeling behavior, that it shaped, our family. So we try to do that with our own kids and that modeling.
Exactly. Yeah,
do what I do, not what I say. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And one story that comes to mind for me is I'm a part owner in a machine shop, and we make like Jeep aftermarket parts and parts for the Navy, and have some heavy equipment manufacturing as well. The company's only about 4 years old, and about a year into it, we get this big contract, and we have like 3 guys on the floor, and we don't know how we're going to get all these parts out. And it's me and a couple other owners, and we start working night shift. We start going in at night and start running the machines. And we did that for like 2 weeks to get this big order out, just because we were a young company. We wanted to have this culture of like, everybody pulls a tarp. So these guys during the day were hustling even harder because they knew the owners were coming in at night, working night shift to make parts. So they almost like wanted to outperform us and have more throughput during the day shift than we did at night. But it created this culture that now 4 or 5 years later, the company's doubling in size and we have an awesome team internally, but it started by planting those seeds in the beginning.
I think what's so cool about the stories that both of you shared there, 2 completely different stories, but look at the effect that it had on the broader organization, the broader community. You've got Jessie, you've got your father cleaning up at the school, setting the tone, and then all of a sudden you have the students and everybody else cleaning up after themselves in this whole new way, pulling the tarp for the school, the community, each other. And Bryan, look at you and your fellow owners pulling the tarp, doing whatever needed to be done. And now you're actually making the business more productive because everybody else is trying to, outshine the owners, and everybody's in this thing together. There's so much power in this pull the tarp mindset, I believe. And I'm on this journey to uncover all the tarp pullers out there and build this world full of tarp pullers, as I talk about it. People who, Jessie, you called it modeling. I use the phrase leading by example, right? Just like you said, not asking someone to do anything that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself or you haven't done yourself. And I think that's so critical. I've had a lot of fun talking to you guys here the last 30 minutes or so. I feel like, Jessie and Bryan, you guys are part of my everyday existence with the 3x5 Life cards. You guys have changed the way I organize myself. I know you're changing the way that so many are going about their day. So keep pulling the tarp, continue to make an impact. And before we wrap up here, I just want to share with listeners, if you want to join me on my 3x5 Life journey, head to 3x5life.com. Buy yourself some 3x5 Life cards. You can use my discount code Andrew10. That's Andrew10. 3x5 Life. That's 3x Life. I'm sorry, 3x5life.com. And my code is Andrew10. Bryan and Jessie, I can't wait to see, where you guys continue to take yourselves personally, professionally, and how many people how many lives you're going to impact along the way with all the great work that you're doing. So thanks for spending some time with me this week, and thank you for pulling the tarp.
Yeah, David, thanks
so
for having
much.
us on.
Really appreciate it.